Hi, I'm Stefan, product lead at Avassa. In this video I will illustrate the multi-tenancy features of Avassa. In the previous videos you have seen Frederick deploying applications, adding sites, etc. All of that was done as a single tenant, the tenant type that we call a site provider. A site provider is that role that owns the complete infrastructure, and you can also deploy applications at the same tenant. However, you can, as site provider, create another kind of tenants that we call application owners. Application owners can work with applications, as you've seen in the other videos. They can define, deploy, upgrade and monitor, but they cannot work with site infrastructure as such. So I'll show this in this video. Let's start with the sites, and I am now the site provider, the tenant that sees sort of everything. Here's the list of sites. There are small icons here. An A, as we have talked before, means that there is an application running on that site. But a T means that we have assigned a tenant. And then again, that's very important when you monitor the infrastructure. Of course, it's more important if you have issues on a site where you have tenants or not. So this indicates that in Amsterdam we have a tenant. If we go into an example site here in Denver, and in other videos you worked with the hosts and applications as such. What's interesting now is that I have actually created, before this video, 2 tenants. I will briefly show how that looks like here and go back to how to define them. So here you can see that on the Denver site I actually have 2 tenants. I have tenant Acme and tenant Visvos. You also get insight into which applications they have running. So you can see that Acme has 1 application running and the tenant Visvos has another. We can also get an understanding of the overall black box health, but you can't drill down. That's very important. As a site provider here, you can't navigate into the application and use all those features because these applications are owned by the application owners. You can also get the reverse view here. So at the site you can go to the list of applications, and to the right you get an insight into who owns that application. And here you see that I, as a site provider, I deploy the visitor counter application. That's me, therefore I can navigate into it. But these 2 applications were deployed by another tenant, so therefore I can't get more details about it. So that should give you a first glimpse on site providers who owns the infrastructure and application owners who can deploy and monitor applications. How does that work then? If we go into tenants here, so I have these 2 tenants. I have the Acme Corporation, and when you create a tenant, out of all available sites you can assign certain sites to that application owner. So in this case I give an Acme a subset of the sites in US, whereas Visvos Corp, they're more global. So I've given them access to North America and Europe. That's the next thing that is very important to understand, that application owners can share the single edge infrastructure. So you can have several different tenants sharing the same resources on the edge sites, because in this case I have a number of sites that are overlapping, namely them in US. How can you then limit the resource consumption from different tenants? That moves us over to the resource profiles. So when you create a tenant, you give tenant a resource profile, and a resource profile can limit GPUs, CPUs, memory, disk, etc. So Visvos, I've given the resource profile named limits, whereas they also have limits, and I can change that one into limits too. So I gave them now a different resource profile. So there you can see how to define tenants, give them different resource profile. Let's have a quick look at the profiles then. So this is a simple example of a resource profile. We can go in and view the edit mode here. So for a resource profile you can, for example, define device labels, meaning what external devices can this tenant access. You can also use the discover of GPUs that we have built in, and then give certain tenants access to certain GPUs. And you see all the other resources like memory, CPU and storage as well. So that's an overview of resource profiles. So, in summary, you have sites, you can assign certain sites to certain tenants. Those tenants will be able to deploy the applications, they can monitor the applications, you can also control how much resources they can use. So if I switch over to tenant view here then, going over to another web browser, and here, for example, I am logged in as Joe at Acme. The first thing to note here is that the list of available sites is very short compared to me as a site provider. Well, that was because I gave only these sites to this application owner. So these are the sites I can work with. Whenever I deploy something, these are the only sites that I can deploy to. The other thing you should notice here, when I click a site, I don't get very much details. I don't get the inside details on the hosts and the resource consumption of the hosts, because that's considered being the role for the site provider. Rather, it's sort of the contract from the site provider where I can see the labels that were assigned. I can use them in my deployment. Other labels, so if the site provider discovered GPUs or devices, those labels will be published here as well. And here, for example, one of the physical hosts were assigned a host label, and I don't see which host here, but me as an application owner, I know that on this site there is at least one host with a host label called safe. So you can consider sort of the labels being the contracts between the application owner and the site provider. As a application owner, you can also, having that said, as an application owner, you can also add your own sort of private labels that only you will see as well. So that gave you a glimpse on the view as an application owner. Let's move a little bit back to securing the data between the tenants. We can use the container logs as an example. So you might remember from the monitoring video that you can, at any point in time, you can reach a site, you can pick up a site, and you can go to the built-in pub sub bus that we have in the Avassa system. So now I am this site provider. I can see here that I can pick up the visitor counter container log, but I don't see any other container logs from other application owners, other tenants. Maybe that is best illustrated by using a bit of command line tools here. So let me first of all ensure that I'm the site provider. So now in the Avassa command line, I am the site provider. If I now list the available topics on the Denver site, so remember the Denver site is a shared site where we have different application owners there. We have Acme and Visbos, both of them have deployed applications. Do I see their application container logs here? No, so the only thing I see as the site provider is the application container logs that I actually deployed. If I switch profile here to Acme, so now I am Acme, and if I do the same command, what are the topics available on that edge site now when I'm the application owner Acme? You see something totally different. Now you see the container logs from my application, and that was one of the examples that whatever you do in the Avassa system as a tenant is totally separated. This example was the built-in pub sub bus and your container logs. The same is true for any networking. We microsegment the network on each edge site so that all the application traffic is isolated between tenants. To wrap up this demo, let me show how easy it is to create yet another tenant. And so go to tenants, you add another tenant, and you can optionally assign a resource profile. Why not? This is again the famous Joe. So there we have a tenant. I'll create submit here is a recovery token here. So I'm the site provider, I'm creating a new tenant, so this is the recovery key that I can save or give to that root user of that tenant. You can optionally choose to save that in a vault in the Avassa system or print it or whatever. So now I have that recovery token. Then you can follow that up with picking sites, and we can say that this guy is someone that is in region Europe. The capital E. Then we have a number of sites, we can assign them, submit it, and we can go to the config and we have that available already. So that was how simple it is to define a tenant. That was all I intended to show about multi-tenancy. Thank you.